Diablo IV seems to have fallen into a strange category of dissatisfaction from those playing the beta, and others saying that it's great and in a better spot. There's also a lot of concerns about employee attrition at Blizzard, and many employees speaking anonymously about their concern about their future, as well as what will happen with Diablo IV after the release, as they see lots of people leaving the company, and there's even sort of emergency plans in place to ensure content for World of Warcraft as well as Diablo 4 will be able to happen as more and more people continue to leave the company. And in the wake of the beta, I wanted to look at what PC Gamer said, because the tweet really caught my attention. I skipped the server slam. I was playing Zelda. I didn't really feel like going back in again. I didn't hear anything that promising about the Druid. Some said it was a little bit better. Others said it didn't feel any better at all. So kind of concerned. Somebody posted a really lengthy Reddit thread and it looked super elaborate. And I was like, I just wanted to know that he feels stronger in the first 10 levels and not so weak. And PC Gamer tweeted and said, whether you're overpowered or underpowered, Diablo 4's combat is a boring slog. And I want to look at the article they linked to when they tweeted this and just kind of react to it, because even Force Gaming sort of reacted to their tweet, and he said this is one of the weird things to take aim at. There are issues with Diablo 4, more and more people taking issue with the seasonal format. I'm super surprised that there's so much agreement brewing on people not wanting to start over every season. And folks who are used to it, they just don't understand why you don't want to make a new character every single season. And Force Gaming sort of disagreeing with PC Gamer and saying, listen, the combat's one of the best pieces of Diablo 4. It's crunchy, it's chunky, it's just really enjoyable. And I agree with that when I played as the sorcerer, but when I played as a barbarian and when I played as a druid, I just didn't feel that good. I also think the damage resistance is a giant mistake at some level. It needs to be curbed way down. I was playing with my wife and she was mowing everybody down because she was 10 levels lower and I was at level, and everything took forever to die. It was really unenjoyable. I think they've really made some weird decisions with that. So let's see what PC Gamer has to say here, where they say class balance is still an absolute joke in Diablo 4, but the game has far bigger problems. I no longer care who needs buffs and nerfs. None of these classes are any fun to play. So they did not have a good time. And coming from PC Gamer, I mean, that's the platform where Diablo was born, right? This isn't some console casual who just tried the game out. This is probably somebody very familiar with the franchise, I would think. It's fair to say that the last time we got to play Diablo 4, during the 2 initial weekend betas, class balance was a complete mess. Sorcerers were nuking everything in sight, while barbarians struggled to lift their axes, and necromancers were standing around AFK watching their skeletons clear entire dungeons for them. Blizzard quickly promised buffs and nerfs, so heading into this final beta, the server slam, I was most curious to see what those changes would amount to. The result? I'm left with even less confidence that Blizzard has any idea on how to make this game fun. That's concerning for me, because that was one of the things I was concerned about. So commonly the debate about this turns into, well, if the barbarian and the druid are strong in the end game, then it doesn't matter. Well, yes, it does matter. The game needs to feel good throughout its entirety. I've never accepted the defense of, well, the game's bad for the first 10 hours, but then it really, heats up in the 12th hour. But no, your content loop needs to be enjoyable. It needs to be created in a good way from the very beginning. And if the sorcerer and the necromancer and even the rogue all feel great from moment one, that doesn't really leave any room for excuses for the barbarian or for the druid. You clearly managed to get these other classes to feel good. Why can't you do it for the others? I don't accept the defense that, oh, well, they get stronger later. Barbarians, at least, felt a little stronger than they did before. It wasn't too backbreaking to beat the Den Mother this time around, but they're still substantially slower, weaker, and less versatile than everyone else. Sorcerers remain walking nukes that can kill enemies 3 screens away. Meanwhile, necromancers got nerfed so haphazardly that they had to get rebuffed halfway through the beta test because their skeleton minions were now dissolving in the presence of bosses and leaving them plinking away with pitiful ranged spells. This is concerning because if you take this commentary and you combine it with the things we're hearing about people leaving and not sure about the status of this game beyond its launch date, and then there's that leaker who predicted what happened with Redfall, they predicted what happened with Starfield, and said that Diablo IV was under crunch and in bad shape. It sounds like they were onto something. It sounds like they had the truth in their corner. They had good info, because why would you, if your game is about to launch, why would you do this to one of the classes? You apparently messed it up so badly that it had to be adjusted in the middle of the beta. We're on the cusp of this game launching in a month. There's not a lot of time left to get these things right, and it's your game. You're not a new developer to Diablo. None of this should be that difficult to have classes feeling good in the first 20 levels. This isn't some maxed out character with a crazy broken build with a certain piece of gear that they just didn't foresee. This is the first 20 levels of the game. This is the most pedestrian game design elements that are going to go into the game. This isn't the complexity of the Paragon boards. This isn't world tier levels and damage scaling. This is the beginning of the game where everything should be pretty much working as it should, because you've made these games before. You have Diablo 3 to lean on. This is all very concerning. I'm sort of in shock that it was that bad that they had to fix Necro mid-weekend. In short, class balance is still an absolute joke, and worse still, Blizzard has shown no sign of having any vision for what direction changes should be going in. Sure, this is still a beta, but the launch date is June 6th, with early access on June 1st, where we're very unlikely to see substantial tweaks before then. Right now, we're looking at a day one where sorcerers and barbarians are not so much playing different games as operating on different planes of reality. And I agree with this take. You're too close to the launch of the game to make substantial changes. And if they start yanking stuff around now, you're going to have that meta pendulum swing where you overdo something and ruin or overbuff a character. Everybody gets used to those buffs, and then all of a sudden you're going to have to nerf them 2 weeks into the life cycle of the game, and then everybody's going to be angry. This does not bode well for the launch of Diablo IV. But really, the class imbalance is just a symptom. The real problem is that it doesn't matter whether your favorite class is firing on all cylinders or shooting blanks. None of them are much fun to play. So let's get to the meat of the article here. They say that the problem is the game itself. So here, for a barbarian, the game is boring because it's a long, slow slog of whacking at spongy health bars. Get out of here. Why is it popping up like that? For a sorcerer, the game is boring because you just throw out a handful of very similar spells that work in all situations and melt in your presence. Everything melts in your presence. At no end of the spectrum has Blizzard found satisfying, interesting gameplay loops other than the endless treadmill of watching the numbers incrementally go up. Okay, at one level, I want to defend the game to a certain degree. That's the content loop of an ARPG. That's not necessarily an indictment of the game's quality, but what I think they're saying is you're either slowly doing everything with the barbarian or mindlessly doing everything with the sorcerer. There's not a lot of in between, and finding that middle ground, I think, is important, because the action element of the game, the moment-to-moment combat, needs to feel good, and it's not going to feel good if it's a slog, and it's not going to feel good if you can just autopilot and it's too easy, or everything just sort of happens almost rote and rehearsed. You're not having to adapt to anything on the fly. Finding that middle ground is tough, but this is Blizzard. This is Diablo. They're the ones that should have nailed this, after all. As I lamented during the last betas, Blizzard hasn't learned anything about action RPG combat in the 11 years since Diablo 3. I'd go so far as to say it stepped backwards. As I went into then, fights are slow and awkward, with any potential interesting combos or loops hamstrung by long cooldowns that prevent any kind of satisfying rhythm. Now, again, I don't agree with that to a certain degree. When I played as the sorcerer, the rhythm was really fun. I remember doing something where if I froze the enemies and then killed them while frozen, it sped my cooldown time up so I could use it more quickly. So I started using my freeze at really opportunistic times. I'd get the enemies very weak with my other abilities, then I'd freeze them, then I'd kill all of them, and I'd get my freeze back very, very quickly. That loop was really satisfying, and I would hope that there would be other little combo loops like that, other synergistic approaches to combat that they could implement, but maybe that's not happening, and that's why they're saying this, because they're saying the sorcerer is so mindless, the other guys feel bad. Character building is the worst of both worlds, streamlined and restrictive, with clear intended paths for characters to take, but fiddly enough that theory crafting is mostly a matter of hunting for keywords. Even healing is wrong-headed. I'm interested in what they have to say about this, because I saw some people that didn't like the healing, and I thought it was fine, but again, I'm not like a long-standing career player. Spellcasters can just ignore their health, while melee characters have to plan every boss fight around when more potions are going to drop, a completely uninteresting subsystem. This is a matter of subjectivity. I actually liked that when I was fighting a boss by myself. Working your way to the potion drops felt really interesting, making sure that I was navigating the fight in a very strategic and intelligent way so that I could use my health potions to stay alive while also making sure, okay, now it's time for me to kind of go crazy with damage, take a little damage on myself, but that's okay because the potions will come back. Now, I could see long term maybe that getting a little bit old, but I actually thought it was a creative way to sort of weave health drops into the fight in a way that felt new and not something that we had done before. They seemingly didn't like it. There are only two ways to die. Either you're a character that can't avoid getting hurt and you simply run out of resources because your DPS isn't high enough to get to the next step of the fight, or you're a character that never gets hurt, but you take a stray hit from an obnoxiously long crowd control effect and you get battered down before you can unfreeze and chug a potion. Neither is at all satisfying or dramatic. Now, some of what they're describing here, I'll actually cosign. I did have that happen a handful of times where you would just get frozen and then you couldn't do anything. You just kind of stand there and then all of a sudden you're dead. And I've always thought immobilizing players for extended periods of time is a strange thing to do because you can't really mitigate that. Once it happens, you're just sort of standing there and hoping for the best, hoping maybe aggro slows or they decide not to kill you. And I do agree, though, with this part about your DPS not being enough. This is definitely a problem for the Druid and the Barbarian. I remember playing as the Barbarian and feeling that pain of, I just have to tank damage, and hopefully I do enough to get to the health potion. So I can see why they had an issue with that mechanic. When I played as the Sorcerer, I enjoyed that mechanic because it enabled me to play kind of risky and push DPS instead of playing it careful because I knew I could rely on those potions when they dropped. That's really what you want. You want people to feel like they can play aggressive and rely on the potions, not necessarily need them to just get the fight done. During the server slam, everyone had one goal in mind, to kill the world boss, Ashava, and claim the exclusive cosmetic. But I highlighted the wrong way. But the Great Beast only ended up being the perfect capstone to Diablo IV's problems. As Frazier discovered, fighting it was just a long, tedious slog that made every part of your character feel meaningless. Playing a tanky build? Pointless, because you die in one hit from its enormous AoE attacks. Playing DPS? Enjoy watching an enormous health bar actively slowly tick down while you spam one spell that it has no visible reaction to. Playing support? No, you aren't. That doesn't exist. Playing Necromancer? Sorry, all your skeletons got banished to double hell and they ain't coming back. All of the slow, tedious grinding of getting to a level 20 culminated in an even slower, more tedious grind of a fight. See, I think what they're getting at is the resistances. Now, obviously, a world boss doesn't need to be made of paper mache, and you just destroy them very quickly. It should be a lengthy fight, but that wouldn't be a problem if the rest of the game didn't feel that way, and that's likely what the issue is. If it felt like a grind and a slog, and fights take a really long time just to get to level 20, just to get through dungeons, or to beat mini-bosses or world bosses, whenever you fight the big bad world boss, whenever you fight Ashava, you're like, okay, I'm sick of this. I'm tired of fights taking so long. You can't have a content loop getting long in the tooth that quickly. That's very concerning about how long people are going to be willing to play. Sure, it didn't help that Blizzard made the bizarre decision to point us all to a level 25 boss while the beta level cap was reduced to 20, but an even faster, easier version of the fight wouldn't have been any less dull. At its core, the combat is simply half-baked. Blizzard never found the fun, whether you're adventuring alone or teaming up with flimsy MMO-like activities. I am more sure than ever that Diablo IV is bringing nothing new to the action RPG table. It's big and shiny and pretty good looking. A lot of people are going to give it a pass for that. Maybe for mindlessly pushing through while you watch TV, it'll do the job for a lot of them. But not only is there no innovation or creativity here whatsoever, there isn't even a basic understanding of how to make an action RPG engaging, and the ineffective tweaks made so far are a sure sign that one isn't developing anytime soon. From a series as genre-defining as Diablo and a studio as storied as Blizzard, we should expect far better. I kind of said that at the beginning of the article, like they should be nailing this, especially the first 20 levels. But hey, the servers did hold up remarkably well. I'll give them that. At least I didn't have to queue up to get my gruel. And that's the end of the article. This is all very concerning because where there's smoke, there is fire. And if you can't nail the first 20 levels and just make it feel good and enjoyable and just winsome, because I had a great time with the sorcerer, but when I played those other two characters that it sounds like they have been marginally improved, if at all, it just felt like a slog. And I think their decision with damage resistance is going to come back to bite them. It made it easier for them to scale enemies as time went on, but if the experience is that enemies resist you more as you level, that doesn't work when you're in the leveling process. No one's min-maxing at level 20 because, well, everybody resists me more now, so I better go have a really good build so that the level 20 enemies feel like they're more at my level and aren't resisting me that much. You don't do that. There's a forward momentum in an action RPG. Now, you min-max and you deal with resistances and difficulty scales and those slopes when you get to the end game, when you get to the point where you're actually doing the hard content or increasing the world tier. But levels 1 through 50, I would even maybe say levels 1 through 100, you don't need this strong slope of resistance which just slows everything down. I think that's the undercurrent to what this person from PC Gamer was talking about. You just make the content and the content loop feel arduous and slow. So then when they go do something like an Ashava world boss, it feeling slow is just par for the course at that point, and it becomes white noise. It's not this monumentous moment where, oh, this is taking us a while, but that's okay. Let's get this done. It's, well, another slow slog of a fight. Hopefully we can survive. Well, hopefully Diablo IV can survive, because as it stands right now, with employees leaving or feeling like they're not going to be there for very long, the future of Diablo IV is in doubt. Let's just see if they can get it off the ground. As always, if you like this kind of content, whether it's these longer form reaction videos or my live streams, hit subscribe and the bell button, and I'll see you in the next video.